Some people wear their greed like an expensive perfume. You can sense it the second they step into a room. That is exactly what happened the Sunday Serena Voss sat across from me at my own dining table, sliced into my best roast lamb, praised my home with that practiced smile of hers, and then, without even hesitating, told me she needed $500,000 for her wedding. My wedding, it seemed. But I am moving too fast. Let me take you back to where all of this began, because you are going to want every single detail. Welcome back to Dad's True Revenge. Grab something to eat, sit back, and remember the people in these stories had every chance to do the right thing. They simply chose not to. Leave a comment telling us where you are watching from, and do not forget to subscribe. You are going to enjoy this. My name is Oscar Stafford, retired, 61 years old. For 32 years, I worked as a fraud investigator in one of the largest financial crime units in the country. I have sat across from con artists so smooth, so believable, that even their own families would have trusted them with everything. I have watched people smile kindly while lying without a single crack showing. So when my son Blake called me on a Thursday evening, his voice shaking with that kind of excitement only young men have when they think they have found something special, I paid close attention. "Dad," Blake said, "I met someone." I was sitting in my recliner. The evening news was playing. Judith was in the kitchen doing what she always does, making the whole house smell amazing and pretending she was not listening. "Met someone?" I repeated, lowering the TV volume just a little. "She's different, Dad. She's really different." Now I want to pause for a moment and ask every parent listening, how many times have you heard those exact words? She's different. He's different. No, Dad, you don't get it. This one is different. I gave the answer every experienced father gives. Bring her to Sunday lunch. She showed up in a white sundress that probably cost more than my first car. Serena Voss, 31 years old. According to Blake, clear skin, sharp eyes, and a handshake so confident it almost made me like her. Almost. Judith, bless her, was already completely taken with her. Within 4 minutes of Serena stepping through our front door, my wife of 35 years was showing her our family photo albums. Photo albums. The ones I am not even allowed to touch without supervision. Blake was glowing, standing just a step behind Serena the whole time, like a man who could not believe his luck. And that right there was the first thing that bothered me. Not the dress, not the handshake. The fact that my son, a confident and capable young man I raised to carry himself strongly in any room, was suddenly acting like Serena's shadow. I made a mental note of that. We sat down to eat. Judith had prepared roast lamb, rosemary potatoes, the kind of meal that makes people quiet with appreciation. Frank Delano, my oldest friend, a man who spent 30 years on the force before retiring, sat at the far end of the table with a glass of iced tea and the most convincing, bored look anyone has ever managed. He gave me a small nod when Serena was not looking. Frank and I had an understanding built over decades. No words needed. I watched how Serena ate. Careful, controlled, measured. Not because she was worried about her figure, but because she was watching us. Every bite planned, every compliment timed perfectly. "This is absolutely beautiful, Mrs. Stafford," Serena said, gesturing around the room. "Oscar, you have created something truly special here." "We created it," I replied, nodding toward Judith. 35 years of bad choices and good luck." Everyone laughed. Serena laughed the loudest and the longest. Just a little too long. I noted that. Blake reached across and held her hand. She held his back without even looking at him. I noted that too. Frank took more potatoes and said nothing at all. Here is something important to understand about a professional con artist, a real one. They never rush. That is what separates them from amateurs. An amateur comes in too eager, too quick, makes their move too early and too clearly. A professional builds comfort first. They make you feel the connection before they ask for anything. They create warmth. They make you invest emotionally before they ever cost you a single thing. Serena Voss was a professional. She spent the first 40 minutes of that lunch being completely charming. She asked Judith about her garden. She asked me thoughtful questions about my career, not intrusive but flattering. She laughed at the right times. She touched Blake's arm just enough to seem loving without overdoing it. And then, just as Judith was clearing the plates, just as the room felt relaxed and full and easy, Serena set down her wine glass, folded her hands, and smiled at me. "Oscar," she said, "I want to talk to you about the wedding." I leaned back slightly. "Of course you do." "Blake and I have been talking, and we both agree we only want to do this once. We want it to be perfect." She paused at exactly the right moment. "We are thinking of a budget of around $500,000. The room went silent. You need to understand that kind of silence, how it feels when everyone reacts differently at the same time. Judith's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Frank slowly set his iced tea down like a man hearing something he already expected. Blake stared at his plate. Then my son looked up, straight at me. Not at Serena. Not at his mother. At me. Before I could say anything, before I could even think of how to react, I felt something move across the table. Slow and careful, hidden behind Blake reaching for the breadbasket. A folded napkin. I picked it up without looking and placed it on my lap. Then I smiled at Serena, wide and warm. The look of a proud father who has no idea what is happening. "Well," I said, "that is quite a number." Her smile stayed steady. "We want to do it properly." "Of course," I said. "Of course you do." Under the table, I opened the napkin with one hand. 4 words, written hard enough to press into the paper. "Dad, she's a scammer." Try to imagine reading that and still smiling. Sitting across from a woman calmly talking about venues and spring dates while your son's warning rests in your lap. Your best friend watching you quietly. Your wife asking about flowers. I have faced dangerous people before. I have interviewed fraudsters who stole everything from the elderly. I have sat across from men who lied so cleanly it almost felt impressive. But nothing prepared me for sitting at my own table with my son's message in my lap and saying calmly, "Serena, tell me more about yourself." Because here is what she did not know. What nobody at that table knew, except Frank. I had not just invited her to Sunday lunch. I had been waiting for her for 3 weeks. So there I was, at my dining table, roast lamb cooling on my plate, Serena Voss still talking about spring venues, decorations, indoor or outdoor receptions. And I nodded, smiled, asked questions, playing the part of the slightly overwhelmed future father-in-law. But inside my head, 32 years of instinct was fully awake. Let me take you back, because you need to understand what those 3 weeks looked like before that Sunday ever came. It began with a phone call, not from Blake, but from a former colleague of mine, Patricia Owens, who spent 26 years in financial crimes and now consults for multiple federal agencies at the same time. She called me on a Tuesday morning, which was unusual. Patricia does not make casual calls. She communicates like a surgeon works, only when needed and always with precision. "Oscar," she said, "does the name Serena Voss mean anything to you?" I was in my garage at the time, moving tools around for no real reason. I stopped. "My son's girlfriend," I said. There was a pause. "Oscar." I placed the bourbon on the table, poured 4 glasses with a generous, almost festive hand, and passed them around as Judith returned. Blake sat back down, and the table slowly came together again into the warm picture of a family Sunday afternoon. I raised my glass. "To Blake," I said, looking at my son with real, simple love, "and to new beginnings." Everyone drank. Serena drank as well. Her eyes were bright, her shoulders loose. She was very close now. She could sense it. The warm host, the emotional toast, the expensive bourbon. These were the final signs she had learned to recognize. The money was less than 48 hours away, maybe even sooner. She had no idea that outside my house, parked 2 streets away, there was a vehicle with 2 federal agents inside, along with 1 representative from the district attorney's office and Thomas Webb holding a hard drive filled with financial records from 7 different cases. She had no idea that Patricia Owens was, at that exact moment, on a video call with both the Phoenix family and the Nashville family, each of whom had signed formal cooperation agreements 48 hours earlier. She had no idea that the number she had been texting all afternoon, Garrett Sims, her partner, her planner, had been picked up by Atlanta PD at 11:15 that morning on an outstanding warrant that Thomas had very helpfully brought to their attention 6 days before. Garrett Sims was not on the other end of that phone. He had not been since breakfast. I set my bourbon glass down, folded my hands together, and looked at Serena Voss with the same calm, steady expression I had used at the start of every important interview in my 32-year career. "Serena," I said, "I owe you an apology." "For what?" she asked. "For not being completely honest with you today." I paused for a moment. "You see, I told you I retired. That part is true. But I didn't mention that retirement for someone like me is a very flexible idea." Something shifted behind her eyes. Very small, almost impossible to see. The first hint of discomfort. "I'm not sure I understand," she said with a light laugh. "Let me explain," I said calmly. "Phoenix, Arizona. 2 years ago. The Collin family. $420,000 requested. Engagement ended." I watched her face closely. "Nashville, Tennessee. About 30 months before that. The Merritt family. Same pattern. Different name used." I tilted my head slightly. Should I continue? Because Thomas has 5 more cases, and honestly, he is detailed to the point of exhaustion. The table went completely quiet. Serena's face stayed composed, and I want to give her full credit for that, because she was truly impressive. She held that composure for almost 4 full seconds. That is a long time when every word you are hearing is a wall closing in around you. 4 seconds of near-perfect stillness, and then it broke. Not in a dramatic way. Not like in films with tears or shouting or chairs scraping loudly. It was much quieter. Her eyes changed. The warmth drained out of them the way color fades from a face in cold water. What remained was something flat, calculating, and completely different from anything she had shown us all afternoon. The real Serena Voss, briefly and unwillingly visible. "I don't know what you think you—" "Garrett Sims," I said, "was arrested in Atlanta at 11:15 this morning." I said it the same way someone reads a weather report. Calm, clear, unavoidable. The number he was using, the one you have been texting since you sat down at this table, has been monitored since Wednesday. I paused slightly. "Your sister, I believe you called him." The silence that followed was the deepest silence I have ever heard inside my own home. Blake carefully set his water glass down. Judith sat very still, her hands folded neatly in her lap, with the quiet strength of a woman who raised a good son, trusted her husband, and was now watching both of those things prove themselves at the same time. Serena looked at me for a long moment, calculating, measuring the distance between where she was sitting and every possible exit. "There are 2 agents outside," I said helpfully. "Technically, they are here as my guests, so for now this is still a social gathering." I leaned forward just a little. That changes the moment you stand up without being asked. She didn't stand. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a single document on the table in front of her. A cooperation agreement prepared by the district attorney's office. Her name was already printed neatly at the top. 7 families. The Collin family lost their retirement savings. The Merritt family's son had a breakdown. I have read every file. I held her gaze. "You are going to sit here, sign this, and give the DA everything about Garrett Sims's operation. Every name, every account, every target you were given. In return, the DA will take your cooperation very seriously when it matters." I leaned back. "Or you don't sign it, and we handle this the other way. Either option works for me, honestly." Serena looked at the document, then at me, then back at the document again, and then she did something I truly did not expect. She laughed. Short, quiet, almost impressed. "How long?" she asked. 3 weeks, I replied. She nodded slowly, the way one professional recognizes another. Then she picked up the pen I had placed beside the paper and she signed her name. The agents came through the front door 11 minutes later. Judith made them coffee because Judith will make coffee for anyone under any situation, and that is one of the 10,000 reasons I have loved her for 35 years. Blake waited until Serena was gone before he spoke. He sat across from me at the now quiet table, the dessert untouched, the bourbon bottle still open, and he looked at me with an expression I will carry for the rest of my life. "How did you know?" he asked. "Before you passed me the note, you already knew, didn't you?" "Yes," I said. "How long had you known?" 3 weeks. He stayed quiet for a moment. "You could have told me." "I could have," I agreed. "But then you would have had to act for 3 weeks instead of just one afternoon. And you did it beautifully, by the way. Your mother's composure. Definitely not mine." He looked down at the table. When he looked back up, his eyes were slightly red at the edges. Not from sadness, I think, but from the deep, tiring relief of a weight finally being lifted. "I really thought," he began. "I know," I said. "For about 6 weeks I truly—" "I know, son." He nodded, swallowed, and pulled himself together with the quiet strength of a young man I am deeply proud of. Frank, from the corner of the room, raised his bourbon glass. "For what it's worth," Frank said in the slow tone of a man who had been waiting all afternoon to speak. "The lamb was excellent. Someone clearly knows what they're doing. They say the best revenge is living well. With respect, the best revenge is 32 years of experience, a friend with a face you cannot read, a district attorney's cooperation agreement, and the good sense to invite the right people to Sunday lunch." Serena Voss's testimony brought down an operation that covered 7 states. Garrett Sims received 14 years. 3 more associates were charged. The Collin family recovered 60% of their losses through seized assets. The Merritt family was informed, and I am told their son is doing better now. Blake, for his part, took 6 months away from dating completely. A sensible decision. And every Sunday, without fail, Judith still makes the roast lamb. Some traditions, in the end, are worth keeping. If you liked this story, join our community by pressing the like button and subscribing for more real, honest, and family-focused stories. And as always, thank you for being part of this space.